watching Power Nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the TrashHawk.
This is a 1986 Jeep Wagoneer, not a Grand Wagoneer. It's based on the XJ platform, just as the Cherokees were from 1983 to 2001. This one's just a little fancier.
This one came equipped with factory vinyl wrapped wood grain, 4 headlights, even came with a set of fog lights. That's where it all stops. Doesn't have 707 horsepower, not all-wheel drive, no ABS, no warranty, not reliable, list goes on and on. The only thing it does have is the $2,000 price tag.
Which I like. Do it. Oh, I'm loose here. We really need to take what the essence of a Trackhawk is and inject that into our Jeep.
Did you disconnect everything?
Got an oil pressure switch sitting over here. I hope so. We'll find out in a minute.
Well, it needs to be V8, needs to be supercharged.
Gotta have the whine.
Gotta have that whine, and it needs to make at least 707 horsepower.
Okay, that's enough. I mean, if we can accomplish all of that, we've got our hands full. Send it to the scrap bin.
There we go.
Good enough.
Sweet. We're not sure what we're gonna use yet, but we know what we're not gonna use, so out it comes. Sorry, cruise control. I think we should save the power distribution block for the alternator and battery. This goes into the main harness, but a lot of this sensors and
Yeah, this is more sensors.
more sensors, I would just lop it all off. Got you there. Now you gotta wonder if I was being serious or being facetious.
I tell you what, I'm just gonna keep them here for now, and if we need to cut them later,
Yeah, you can decide later.
we'll decide later.
I love tearing everything apart. Whether it goes back together is sometimes my problem, but a lot of times not my problem.
It's gonna be my problem. I think I'm gonna leave everything else here, which is kind of important. A blank canvas. These engine mounts and brackets, obviously all that's gonna have to go, but let's just take a measurement across the narrowest part and see what we're working with.
Yeah.
You can do the back of the bracket.
Back of the bracket.
I mean, it's gonna be kind of tight. I think we should just start measuring some engines and see what we got.
I mean, if we got a Hemi block.
Hey, Brandon, catch.
Oh man,
What?
LS.
Well, yeah. What's wrong with that? Look at that.
I mean, it does fit. I hate to be those guys who put LSs and everything, but there's a reason. It's a small package with a lot of potential.
Yeah, I mean, we could force the Gen 3 Hemi thing, but the guys down in Engine Power actually have an LS that they're working on right now, which would be ideal to reach our power level. We just need to get a supercharger to put on top of it. I say we make some engine mounts and just go from there. With our engine choice made and Brandon working on the engine mounts, I figured I'd go ahead and get our transmission figured out and show you what we're working with. Now, we know that the Trackhawk is both all-wheel drive and automatic, and that's part of what makes it so streetable, but we're gonna actually go in another direction. We're gonna go with a stick and 2-wheel drive. And to do that, we're gonna use this Magnum 6-speed that we got from American Powertrain. This thing is great because it does have 6 forward gears, but the main thing with it is it'll handle that 700 pound-feet of torque that we're thinking we're gonna make. Not only that, the kit comes with a scatter shield. You can't just run a regular cast bell housing on something like this. A twin disc clutch from Center Force. What's great about a twin disc is it is streetable, but then it also has that extra grip for that kind of torque level. The kit also comes with this Hydromax clutch release bearing kit. It's basically your throwout bearing is your clutch release, and that's gonna be all hydraulic, and we'll figure that out as far as connecting that to a clutch pedal later on. For now, we're just in the mock-up phase, so we just need to get the bell housing mounted to the transmission and get it in the truck.
Now, TrashHawk hasn't been this clean since probably before I was born. So after its bath, I still had to make the engine mounts. Now, this is a unibody, so you can't just go welding motor mounts to the sheet metal. You actually have to plate them. especially since we're running 707 plus horsepower in this thing. Now, I found a company online, Overkill by Design, that actually makes engine mount swap kits for LS to XJs. This is perfect because it's pretty much what I was gonna design, but this is bolt-in, and it's gonna save us a lot of time on this project. Plus, they're powder coated.
Yeah, and on the engine side, it comes with these polyurethane mounts, so all we really need to do is drop this thing in. All the room. Let's go up with it.
Yeah.
Well, we've got our engine mounted in place, and that is a big relief. We still need to figure out our transmission here, but it looks like there's a lot of room. What is gonna be a concern is where the shifter is gonna land. This vehicle was an automatic, and we removed the shifter, and it was like this big shifter assembly, and it left this big hole in the floor here. And that's really where our shifter needs to land. That's gonna be the most comfortable for the driver. So there's only one way to find out, get a measurement and figure out where it is. And the center of this hole is actually 23 and about a quarter. So let's see what it's like here. 27.
I mean, that's a little long, but these shifters are reversible. They might get us pretty close.
Actually, yeah, if it flips around 180, that's gonna be like within a quarter of an inch.
Yeah, let's try it.
All right. That's the great thing about these aftermarket transmissions. There's different shifter configurations which work in a wide range of applications. Oh, look at that. 23 and 1/4.
Oh, dude,
To the
that's
center of the holes.
You can't get any better than that.
Nah.
Might have to take that bracket off. Even though the transmission fits in the tunnel, we want to make sure that there's enough clearance for when the drivetrain's under load.
Oh, it looks good this time. Let me change the angle just a little bit.
Swing the rear.
Yeah, can you swing the rear? Is that where the boot's hitting? Yeah.
Yeah. I think if we just cut that floor pan open just a little bit more.
So like right there. Something like that?
Yeah.
All right, right there. Yeah, that's close.
It's close.
Yeah.
We're not hitting the floor anymore.
Well, that's good.
Dude, that cross member actually works pretty good.
Yeah, you got enough room here. And what's nice is we'll be able to run our exhaust above it.
All we gotta do is make a little pedestal for the trans mount.
Yeah. Well, the factory one was similar, but we could either bolt it in or just weld it on there with an offset pedestal.
I think just weld off a new pedestal.
All right. For now, do you want to just, since this is where we want to set it, do you want to just set something in here for now? That way we can get the transmission jack out and go back up top?
Yeah, I think a 2x4 will sit in
And we'll make that later?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Good.
Good?
Special delivery.
Ooh, look at that. That's going to make the power.
Yeah, you wanna throw it on?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, it needs to slide back a little bit.
Just a little bit. Right there.
There, yeah.
Dude.
Wow.
I think the hood's gonna close.
Only one way to find out. All right, let's give this thing a try. I think it's gonna close. Oh yeah. Yeah, with room to spare too. Brandon, how's the shifter location? Brandon. Hey,
What? Hey,
how's the shifter?
it's awesome. It fits in the same hole. I think the whole interior is gonna go back the same.
Perfect. We're well on our way then.
Yes.
We've got this 80s jewel in here, complete with the wood grain package, but it's not the body that's on the chopping block. It's everything underneath, because we're building our vision of a Trackhawk knockoff that we're calling TrashHawk.
Now we've already had this LS engine installed into the truck, but even after adding a supercharger, this one didn't want to run.
But we do have a real supercharged LS that's going to go in the truck today, along with all the other supporting drivetrain components, like the 6-speed manual that we mocked up last time, and both axles. Up front, we've already determined we're switching to 2-wheel drive. So this Dyno 30 4-wheel drive has to go. But we do have a cool brake upgrade we want to show you, whether you've got a 2-wheel or 4-wheel drive XJ.
And I'm going to be hitting the junkyard up for a rear axle that's one, gonna fit under the truck, and two, it's gonna handle the 700 plus horsepower thrown at it. And while I'm back there, I'm gonna adjust some altitude problems.
Let's do this. Well, here's the axle that we picked up from a junkyard for a couple $100. It's out of a 2001 Jeep Cherokee 2-wheel drive. And it's got all the mounting provisions exactly the same as ours, except it's 2-wheel drive, so it doesn't have any of the center section or axles, just a blank tube in here. Since it's a coil spring setup, and we are gonna lower this truck, we figured we'd just buy some lowering springs, but lo and behold, we couldn't find any. But as you can imagine, there's a ton of 4-wheel drive stuff available, so that's where we turned. There was a couple of things that we needed when we ordered a coil spring for the front of this vehicle. One, we need a static rate, and then also we needed something that's gonna be high enough rate to handle the extra weight we're adding to our XJ here, seeing that we're switching from a 6-cylinder to an 8-cylinder, and we can accomplish that with this set of coil springs that we got from Summit Racing. These are for a lifted vehicle, so the only drawback is they're actually taller and they're gonna compress less than the factory springs would, but it's nothing a little cutting won't fix. We'll just cut a couple of coils out of there. Notice we're using a cutoff wheel to cut our spring shorter. You never wanna use a torch to either heat up and lower the spring or to torch it off, because if you heat up the spring too much, it's gonna sacrifice the integrity, and that could cause a failure. Well, with the control arms in place, I could go ahead and get my cut springs in here. We are gonna have to order some shorter shocks later, but we'll get to that.
Well, I made it to Butler's, and this is pretty much a truck guy's dream. They got tons of axles to choose from. So let's see if we can find what we need. Greg's got this yard pretty organized, so it wasn't too hard to find the Ford 8.8 axle that we wanted. It's the right width, it's got disc brakes, limited slip, 373 gears, and the best part, it's the same bolt pattern as the front axle. So let's stop playing around, get this thing loaded up, and take it back to the shop. So with just a little research beforehand, you usually could save a ton of money when upgrading your project. That's why I love junkyards. All right, I'm pretty eager to get this Ford 8.8 under TrashHawk, but before we could do that, I gotta take all the old suspension out, and that's gonna start with these old shocks. By the looks of it, the underside has seen a lot more salt than we originally thought. Some of these components are pretty crusty. There we go. Since we're swapping the axle, I'm just gonna cut the U-bolts. All right, I wanna give you a little perspective on how over-torqued those U-bolts were. That's the top plate. It should not look like a banana. And this is the bolt. It is literally bent in another direction. That is over-torqued. You can see how corroded and smashed the center is. It's actually lost thickness, and these are separating. There's no way that this is gonna hold 700 plus horsepower. I'm gonna go ahead and take off the old shocks and the original sway bar to make room for our 8.8. I ordered up all new components, so we're retiring these well-cycled old leafs. All right, the first step in getting this 8.8 into the Jeep Cherokee is take these brakes loose and get these purchase cut off. Now the Ford 8.8 is the most common swap into any Jeep, and they make a bunch of kits. We got this one from Summit Racing. It comes with everything you need. You got the purchase, the U-bolts, the backing plates, even has the shock mounts. Now these kits are built with the off-road in mind, and they bolt up on the bottom side of the leaf. Now we're gonna repurpose this kit for a flip kit and put it on the top of the leaf like that. And that's gonna give us the 6-inch drop that we want. It's gonna have that mean look with a strong axle, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel while doing it. That's pretty good angle to start with right there. Until we get the drivetrain and the truck at ride height, we're not gonna weld in anything. That way we can adjust pinion angle and get it correct.
That's our awesome TrashHawk engine on the dyno and engine power.
And you can find the full engine build episode on Power Nation. It's pretty cool to have our own engine shop just down the hall.
Well, it's off the dyno and in our hands.
Now, since we're building a Trackhawk knockoff, we had to have at least 707 horsepower. And the guys at Engine Power, well, they blew it away with 785 horsepower, which is massive.
Yeah, that's a huge number, and there's nothing wrong with a little extra horsepower, right?
No.
Now all we need to do is get this thing in TrashHawk.
This is an exciting day.
This thing seems like a little bit of overkill.
Nah.
You good?
Yep. Nope, right there, perfect. I'm all the way in. Did you ever envision Jeep saying back in the day, someone might stick a almost 800 horsepower engine in this thing?
No, they definitely did not intend it for that.
This is awesome.
They'd be proud though. I'm gonna come down.
Yeah.
It's a little heavier than the other one was.
Are we hitting on anything? No, it's just
Like it?
sitting where it's wanting to.
Woo!
This makes me happy.
It should. All kinds of room. You want to drop the radiator in and see if it clears? Looks like there's going to be plenty of room.
Oh yeah.
We probably could have mounted it in front of the radiator support.
Well, you're still gonna
Wow.
have an interference with the intake.
It's okay. One word.
One word? Groundbreaking.
My word is money.
Dude, I can't stop
good day.
smiling. I legit can't stop smiling.
Oh yeah.
That's what we're gonna be doing on the track, just.
No, it's gonna be like this.
Yeah.
You know, when this project was just a sketch on a napkin, we didn't expect the bigger pieces to fall together quite so easily.
Yeah, we thought we had to at least pull the dash and the carpet and modify the firewall.
But hey, we'll take it.
Adjust it.
Adjust it a little bit. Okay. It's probably pretty good right there.
That's super close.
Going up. Angle look good too.
It could go down in the back or up in the front.
Down in the back.
Right there. Oh, that's perfect.
Pretty good. Oh.
Oh,
Oh, look at that.
yeah. Like a glove. All right, you want to reset?
Yeah.
All right, now that we got the transmission in here, let's slap that cross member in. Whoa. Now the only thing we had to do to the original trans cross member is make this pedestal for the transmission to sit on, and that's gonna give us enough room for the exhaust to go on both sides.
Another major component that you need to figure out when you're doing an engine swap like this is the exhaust manifolds. Now we were gonna use headers that were for an S10 with an LS swap, but they didn't fit. So we ended up going with these cast iron manifolds from Hooker. They're actually for a Jeep Wrangler with an LS swap. Plenty of room in here. Another thing you'll notice that we've been using a lot are these ARP fasteners. And whether you pick their black oxide or the stainless steel like we're using, they're super strong. They're even stronger than grade 8, but especially these stainless steel ones, they look nice as well. You can also get 6-point or 12-point heads. They offer kits, whether it be head bolt or head stud kits, but also accessory kits, and that's what we're using here. If you get one of those accessory kits, it comes with everything for your belt drive, comes with intake manifold bolts, valve cover bolts, oil pan, and even these for the manifold. A couple of things to keep in mind when you are using these: you got to use the proper assembly lube that ARP provides and then torque them to spec. Another thing too, if they don't already offer what you're looking for, they have a special order option and they'll make it for you. We're making some great headway on TrashHawk today. We got the engine and transmission installed permanently. I did an axle swap on the front from 4-wheel drive to 2 and even upgraded the brakes. Back here, Brandon swapped in this disc brake 8.8 out of an Explorer, and he even did a flip on it while he was at it, which effectively lowered the rear suspension of our Jeep about 6 inches. Now that is where it's gonna be. We've actually got it compressed here and sitting at ride height. What's great now is that we get to use that as a starting point to set our ride height in the front. That way we can get this thing sitting on all fours, which I want to get to today. Now the way we're going to do that to eliminate any variables is we're going to use this string, which is set up at the center line of the rear axle, like I mentioned, at full compression. Now with this thing being level and the vehicle sitting at the rake we want it at ride height, it's got a little bit of rake built in there. Just double check and make sure this thing's level, and it is. Then we can determine where the center line of our front axle needs to be in relation to the wheel opening. And what we're gonna do is measure that, which is 16 inches. Now that we know that number, we can go ahead and strike the string, unload the rear suspension, compress the front suspension, see where we're at. All right, we've got the front suspension at full compression. Now we can get a measurement, and that is 19 3/4. So we need to check a couple of other things before we determine what we need to do to make up that 3 3/4 of an inch. We've got 4.5 inches between the oil pan and the axle tube, which is plenty. And then between the upper control arm and the engine mount, we've got exactly 3.5 inches. So that's a problem. If we raise the axle 3 3/4 of an inch like we need to get to our measurement, well, the control arm will just be sitting on the engine mount, so we can't do that. Plus, we need a little extra room for up travel of the suspension, we'll say about 1 inch. So in order to get our coil cut, we need to figure out how much of it we need to cut. So if we're gonna go 2.5 inches, we need to know how much height is in one single coil, and that is 2 inches. So we need to cut out 1 1/4 coils. I just need to unload the suspension, pull the coils out, cut them. We'll put them back in and compress it. Try it. Okay, moment of truth. We've got, with our current setup, the front as low as it's gonna go. And it looks like it's not as low as the rear yet. Give it a shake just to make sure. And so now at this point, we have to either lift the rear, which we can totally do, or figure out another way to lower the front. And we've already said the upper control arm is gonna hit the engine mount here. So that's the next point of contact. So I think you know which way I wanna go. And that's gonna be get the cutoff wheel out and force this front to go down. So what we're gonna do is cut the upper trailing arm pedestals and lower them to gain us some clearance. This is gonna change our geometry a bit, but that's what the adjustable control arms are for. All right, from the center of the bolt to the bottom of the axle tube is 6 3/4, and that one's 4 1/4 now, so that gained us 2.5 inches. Well, that was kind of a dirty way to get there, but we've got plenty of travel and we've got a little extra room if we want to lower the front a little more. We're about 1 inch away from my goal here, but before we do that, I want to go ahead and raise the rear up just a little bit. We can always cut more out of those coils later.
And now we're gonna be lifting the rears with an add leaf. This is a leaf that goes inside the pack you already have, and it's gonna increase the spring rate, which increases the height by 1.5 to 2 inches, depending on your application. So let's get these in there. Voila. I think we were a little ambitious thinking we could lower the truck 6 inches all the way around with that stock straight axle. But with the add leaf, it's easy enough to raise the rear to match the front, which we kind of suspected we were going to have to do anyway, but hey, that's part of building hot rods.
Now it's a big day for us and for this project because we're gonna get all the finishing touches done on it, get it running and driving, and take it out and shred some rubber.
Man, I was gonna say that. All right, the first thing I'm gonna work on is our fuel system. Now the guys down at Engine Power already installed a Phytech EFI system on our Supercharged LS, so of course I went back to them for our fuel pump. This has two 340 liter per hour fuel pumps in it. It's internally regulated and it's capable of up to 1,600 horsepower. So this system's perfect for what we got going on with our 788 horsepower. The kit also comes with all the fittings, stainless lines. All I gotta do is find a spot under the truck and get this thing mounted. Okay, with how low this Jeep is and how tightly packaged everything is underneath the truck, the safest place for this fuel pump is gonna be on this interior quarter panel. All I gotta do is make a metal bracket to hold it up, run the fuel line straight through the floor into the tank. And the cool part about this, I get to keep most of my interior panel. All I gotta do is cut a little hole out, so just gotta make the bracket. The material I'm using is just some polished stainless I found laying around. Oh, dude, that ain't going nowhere. Now all I gotta do is get the panel trimmed, run the fuel lines to the floor. Yeah.
We got a new tank from rockauto.com, but modified the original sending unit with a pair of -6 bulkhead fittings so we could retain our factory fuel gauge. With the tank in place, we're gonna install this inline electric fuel pump.
All right, now that we got all the components mounted, it's time to plumb everything. Now how we get all that fuel out of the tank is by that pump that Mark just installed right about here. That's actually gonna feed this sump. And this is your inlet for the sump, and then this is the return back to the tank for the fuel you don't need. And these are your two high pressure lines that are gonna feed the engine. Now both those lines get a check valve, and we're gonna go ahead and run it through a Y, that way we could run one line up to the front. Then that's gonna take a 10 micron filter before it gets to the engine, that way we know the fuel is nice and clean. Now how all that's regulated is by these two boost references right here, and that's gonna run off the vacuum of the engine. Now the nice thing about Phytech is their fuel pump wire and relay are already integrated into the EFI, so all you gotta do is plumb and wire everything and you're ready to go. We just went ahead and cut a hole in the floor, nothing too crazy. We're just using -6 AN lines for the whole fuel system, and we're installing all the fittings hand tight until all the lines are routed. Then we'll go back and tighten everything. Installing AN hose ends onto braided line can be a little tricky at first, but practice makes perfect. This is the return line to the tank. Looks pretty good. This is our little contraption we came up with to get our check valves, our Y, and our post filter installed so that we only have to run one line up to the front.
Wow, that looks really nice, Brandon.
Yeah, this setup, pretty sweet.
So I hate to stop you, but we've got some other things that we need to take care of here.
It seems like you're putting a lot of pressure on me.
Brakes, I'm talking about brakes. Well, up front here, we've gotten a lot accomplished. If you'll remember last time, we switched this thing from 4-wheel drive to 2-wheel drive, and then we lowered it. And then we also upgraded to the WJ brakes, which added about 1 inch overall diameter to our rotor, which is a pretty cool brake upgrade for you DIYers at home. But we do have some more upgrades that we want to do to the brakes here, which we're going to do first. But while we're at it, we're also going to finish all the other connections up front. A couple of things we've got missing, like we got to get our sway bar links connected here. We still got to connect the brake hoses and a couple other little things. These OEM pads and rotors are fine, but we've got something better in mind. This axle stub right here, this is important.
Just like the four-wheel drive version, the hub bearing assembly is held together by the axle. And since this is a two-wheel drive, it still needs that support. So this unit gets a stub shaft in place of the axle shaft and is torqued to 175 foot-pounds.
Now that big brake upgrade we showed you last time is just fine with all of those OEM components, but we're gonna be doing some particularly spirited driving with our Jeep here, so we went to EBC Brakes for this pad and rotor combo. This is EBC's USR rotor. These yellow stuff pads are my go-to. These pads are great for the street or track. Oh yeah, that looks nice. One last upgrade we want to do here on the front suspension on our Jeep is going to be this track bar. Now this factory one is just fine if you're going to be running stock ride height. If you're going to lift or lower, in our case, you want to have an adjustable track bar. Now this one we got from Summit Racing. It is made for lifted Jeeps, but since it's adjustable, this will work fine for us, and plus, it's extra beefy. With that track bar in place, we can get the sway bar links installed, followed by the tie rods, and this front end is done. Well, that does it here for the front end of our Jeep. We do need to bleed the brakes, and as you can imagine, our alignment's all out of whack now, so we need to get that taken care of, but we'll do all that right before we take it out for its maiden voyage.
All right, so the last time we worked on this rear end, we got it all welded up, the pinion angle's correct, went through and put new bearings and seals in it, even did a true track and this nice fancy diff cover, even got the shocks and sway bars in it. But the one thing we didn't do are these wheel studs. Now, since we're running almost 800 horsepower to this rear end, we want to put stronger studs in it and longer studs. That way we could run different tires, say we're at the track or the drag strip. So the first thing we need to do is get these axle shafts out. Now I went ahead and took the gas tank and fuel lines out to make it a little easier for you guys to see this. These differentials are so easy to take apart. Most of it falls out. There we go. Once you get that C-clip out, axle shaft just comes right out. So here's a little comparison between the wheel studs we're going to be using. You can see this is the factory one and this is an ARP one. They're a lot longer and stronger, and a lot of racing sanctions actually require you to have a longer wheel stud. So this is a little safety precaution for us on TrashHawk. It takes a little extra effort to install these ARP studs because the knurls are so strong, which is exactly what we want.
Well, we're getting pretty close to the finish line here on our Jeep, but there's a few things we still need to button up before we can get this thing on the ground and running and driving. One of those is the electrical system, specifically the starting system. So we went to our local AutoZone for all of this stuff by Duralast. This battery is actually the size that's for our Jeep, but it's got enough cranking amps to turn over that supercharged LS that we've got under the hood. And they had the battery cables we needed. We just ordered custom lengths. But the centerpiece when it comes to the starting system is, of course, the starter itself. So we went with this Duralast remanufactured starter. Now, remanufactured doesn't necessarily mean less quality. These Duralast starters are engineered for OE or better performance and torque output. They're remanufactured by Tier 1 or OE manufacturers with 100% new wear components and high quality materials. All the brushes are completely new, and these things are built to take the heat. With some new bolts and those fresh cables, this Jeep's almost ready to get cranking. Well, that pretty much buttons up the underhood here for our TrashHawk. As you can see, we had to cut a hole in the hood here for the air cleaner. That's fine. I mean, we knew we were gonna have to do something with that anyway, and then we added some hood pins, unfortunately, but I'm okay with hood pins as long as they're functional. And since we had to eliminate our hood latch a while back when we installed that radiator, well, they were kind of necessary, but they do kind of look cool. So it won't be long now until this thing is gonna be hitting up the track. Well, we are getting dangerously close to getting TrashHawk out for its maiden voyage, and to do things, well, Jeep Wagoneers just shouldn't do. And the last piece of the puzzle is gonna be wheels and tires.
Now we went with an off-the-shelf 18-inch Koenig. This is a flow-formed wheel, so it's not gonna break the bank. We went with bronze to match that wood grain. Now these are Continental Extreme Contact Sports, 285/40 in the rear, 265/40 in the front. This is an ultra-high performance street tire for your daily or track vehicle. This has a 340 tread wear, so it's not a full race tire, but it's not gonna wear out as soon as you hit that asphalt. Now, this thing is awesome in the dry, but extremely good in the wet. And that's because of the tread design and all this siping. So if you've got a street truck or a full-on race car or just a track daily, this is the perfect tire. Now, we chose this for TrashHawk because it's light, has a ton of horsepower, and we need all the traction we can get to that asphalt on the street and the track. So, just gotta put this one on. It may or may not be your cup of sweet tea,
But this is TrashHawk, and we absolutely love it.
All right, we got TrashHawk all buttoned up, and we're down here at Engine Power on the dyno to see how much power it makes, because this is a trashy version of a Trackhawk. So one of our requirements was 707 at least horsepower.
Well, we did that on the dyno, made 787, so we beat it by 80, but these things will have about a 15% driveline loss with a manual transmission, so it'll be interesting to see what it does, but this thing is spectacular. It's one of my favorite builds you guys have done.
Well, I appreciate you guys saying that, because you guys are about the first people to see this, so.
If y'all are done yakking, let's see what it'll do.
right.
I'm excited. I want to see.
I'm gonna turn on a
that
loud
on.
fan here.
Hey, Dad, when we get to the store, can I get a toy?
We have toys at home, son. You keep it up, I'm gonna turn this thing around and take us back home.
You know what the first rep was?
I forgot to push the red button. I was just so like
652.
652.
Yeah. 652 and 601 pound-feet.
601.97 pound-feet.
That's ripping.
That's meaner than I thought it was going to be through that exhaust. No, that's really good. I expected it to be a little less, I'm going to be honest with you. Dude, I am almost speechless on this one because it's so cool.
This thing is so sweet.
I want to see it run, and now you're going to go run it.
Oh yeah. As much as I'd love to sit here and just make pulls all day, we gotta go drive this thing.
This thing's gonna be wild. You better be careful.
No doubt. It was wild on here.
Yeah.
All
I like
right.
it. Woo!
Well, we are here at NCM Motorsports Park in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and what better place to take TrashHawk out and see what it can do.
Then the track? Yeah.
Yeah, and then out here in the lot.
Yeah.
Because,
Well, there's a lot of rubber left on these new tires.
yeah, those tires aren't gonna be any good when we're done here, I promise you that. So, I figured since you haven't been out here on this track and I've got some seat time out here and some experience with this track, let's just take some leisure laps here.
Yeah.
So you can get a feel for the track. It's an amazing facility. The surface is great. It's got some elevation changes, all different types of turns.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good track. Lots of power, man.
Yeah.
Steering is not as positive as I would want it to be, but this thing is straight up animal.
And this thing feels stable.
It is.
Oh, there's death wobble.
Felt it.
Yep.
It's a little sketchy. I'm not gonna pretend like it's not. But feel that lateral grip.
Yeah. I mean, the grip with these tires is pretty impressive.
That was all those brakes had. That was all they had. But Overall, this thing is mind-bogglingly fast.
Yeah.
We're gonna do some cool down, because that was a little harsh.
Our suspension setup, as far as, because we got the lifted coils that have a higher spring rate
Right.
that we cut shorter.
Yep.
We have the add leaf in the rear, the axle on top of that, the leaves.
Yep.
So there's less axle wrap. We got, what, 285s? What is it, 285, 40, 18s? I mean, we got bigger sway bars.
Yeah.
Everything on this truck, even the lowered straight axle, is like, oh yeah, dude, I never thought it was gonna handle like this.
No. Well, we made a few laps. Brandon's got familiarized with the track a little bit. Now that I've gotten the car shaken down quite a bit, I feel comfortable going out and making some hot laps, so I'm gonna get my brain bucket here.
All right, so I'm just gonna go up in the crow's nest and watch.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna see what she'll do.
What a ripper.
When I dreamed up this concept of using an XJ to build a Trackhawk knockoff, I never dreamed it would turn out to be such a cool and impressive truck. It's a counterfeit, and a poor one at that. It's powered by an LS, not a Hemi. It's a manual instead of a zippy modern auto, and it's rear-wheel drive, a huge difference from the all-wheel drive Trackhawk. But it just works. It handles like a sports car, it's got a ton of grip, plenty of braking, and accelerates coming out of the turns like a banshee. It's a little sketchy, but in a way that makes it more fun to drive. Is it a Trackhawk? No, but it's better in so many ways. Plus, it just looks cool. NCM's Corvette experience gives you a combination of classroom instruction and hands-on practice on the track in a lead-follow format. You can get behind the wheel of a C8 Corvette Stingray Z51 for laps around their 3.2 miles, 23 turns road course, built for speed.
And when you become a member of the driving club at NCM Motorsports Park, you become part of a special community of like-minded motorsports enthusiasts.
Okay, so now it's your turn.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab my helmet.
Have fun.
This truck's awesome.
Yes, it is.
Oh, this is the first time driving this thing.
Be safe out there. When he comes back, he is gonna have a permanent smile on his face. You're not gonna be able to wipe it off for weeks, you watch.
Finally, it's my turn to take the wheel of TrashHawk and see what she can do. Woohoo! Oh my God, this thing's a handful. This thing is awesome! Holy cow! Wow, this is like nothing I've ever driven. The way this handles is, it shouldn't do this. You don't need much more in life than a 700 horsepower Cherokee. Oh yeah, that's every bit of 125. Well, I used every last bit of fuel in this thing. There's no explaining this. You have to drive this. The pedal?
So the one comment that I had when I was driving it was, if you blindfolded me and you put me in here and then you cut a hole in the windshield and all I could see was what was in front of me, I would never in a million years guess that I was driving a Jeep.
No.
Any Jeep, like, doesn't even matter, just it's a Jeep.
Yeah, I would be able to tell it's probably a little bit heavier than, or a different shape than a car.
Right.
This has probably been
I knew it.
the best day at work ever.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
All right, dude.
Oh,
On to the next one. Let's get this thing out of here, get it back to the shop, put a for sale sign on it. Start building something else cool. But before we go, oh, it'll do a burnout. Your turn. You